All right, so let's see what these two teams want to prioritize. Ambessa gets taken off the board. So already, jungle pool still quite wide open. Two of our main control mages in the Rise and the Orianna are taken off the board. Premier's support in Karma is gone. Varus flex between AD as well as top lane also gone. So now you're looking at power picks like Ashe Seraphine. Do you want to just try and split up that duo? Do you want to take away the Rumble? Do you want to take one of the junglers off the board? No Rumble for first pick on Zika's side.
Not at all. And I mean, we've looked at a lot of these bot lane pairings that are still open. I do think things like Bard in support have been really powerful this season, and whether or not they get picked up early remains to be seen. There are plenty of pairings still to go. The only real one taken off the board is any form of Karma. So like you mentioned, Ashe Seraphine, Yunara Lulu, Corki Nami, right? We've got those high prior bot lanes to take for us. What I like though is this initial denial of this Jarvan, really. You take something with mobility in the bot lane, let's make sure that we can get out of that Cataclysm and make the Jarvan's life really tricky in this game.
So now it begs the question, do Weibo just want to go for the instant Ashe Seraphine slam on their own? Level 1 push, definitely a little bit in their favor, and they'll have the utility. I will say, some of the best Bard plays into the Ashe Seraphine bot lane combo in these mid-game fights have been identifying, oh, when they're going for the everyone just press R on one target, the Tempered Fate completely desynchronizes all the engage. So Weibo Gaming lock in that powerhouse duo, but BLG will get their priority for a blind for Bin in the top lane.
Okay, so it's going to be the Gnar locked in, which, you know, with this composition that BLG have already drafted themselves, we're not looking at too much of an identity. Expectation here is that it's going to continue being this team fight style of composition, right? We've got a little bit of range, we've got a little bit of poke, we've got a little bit of all-in with the Gnar as well if we fancy going forward. So there's nothing that's crazy out of this draft, whereas Weibo Gaming as well looking at some things that can do very well as we move into the late game here with that Seraphine in that late game. I feel like this champion is the most bonkers support to be able to have in these long drawn out setups, and I think especially versus an Ezreal actually has a very good stylistic matchup because you can make the Ezreal sort of suffer where he pokes you out, but your Seraphine, if he doesn't do that consistent damage and get you bursted down, you heal it all back up anyway.
Would love to see if BLG can find a consistent Serpent's Fang carrier either through Xun or Knight if he busts out some kind of AD mid laner. BLG making sure to protect this Bin Gnar by not only taking out the Jace, but also the Vayne. Credit to Zoyan for putting the fear of God into Bin's eyes, and unfortunately for him, experiencing the pain behind that particular matchup. But Weibo have eliminated two high priority jungle matchups here for Xun, or at least some options left available. But if BLG are starting to hover an Annie, I can only imagine that a Nefiri is waiting in the wings for Xun.
Yeah, I mean, I personally despise this pick currently, so I'm not the best person to talk to about Annie's, but it's locked in for Viper by Viper for Knight anyway. And I really think that you're hitting the nail on the head there, Mark. It's clearly looking towards something that's going to suggest aggression from Xun. What we don't want here is some low-down, low-tier type of jungler that doesn't have that crazy all-in potential, that doesn't have that massive playmaking style that we've come to know, to love, to expect from this BLG jungler.
My only concern if this is a Xun Nefiri is that your ability to start invading super early on or get invaded on is very subject to more Jarvan favored because he has that attack speed steroid off of the flag. But if Xun has a pocket Lee Sin that I'm not aware of, I could
Every
be
jungler
down
has a
for
pocket
this.
Lee Sin, you know? That's the rite of passage in the jungle, isn't it?
That is true, but there's some newer junglers that, like, I just never see Lee Sin come out of their back pocket as well. But a Mel being locked in.
So it's Aurora top lane. Yeah, to answer the Gnar, I mean, typically we see these AP top laners. Usually you think Kennen as the answer for a Gnar, but Aurora does a similar sort of thing here where you can play at that range, make sure that you're not really ever in any danger, and then look to punish the Gnar as well. So I like this pickup. I like the idea that's being tossed around there with that pick. And sort of as you'd highlighted, Mark, here, really good call out that Xun Nefiri gets locked in. It's Knight to play the facilitator this time. to allow for Jun to pop off.
This just brings me back to 2025 JDG with Shun and Scout running this duo to most of the time rack up consistent wins because they just put the faith in Shun to get those dogs barking on the Rift. Now, I want to go back and iterate my concerns about early on. Shun doesn't have a lot of leeway when it comes to just super aggressive in your face. So early wards are going to be really important for BLG to protect Shun's first clear. Afterwards, and if you are able to get to your first and second item, the scaling is going to be big. But the big concern as well for BLG is, can these solo lanes withstand themselves in these solo individual matchups or with interference from Jiejie without Shun there to bail them out?
And that's the big question, isn't it? That's what they're going to have to answer this game. Obviously, BLG come in as your favourites, 5-2 record. We can see on the bottom there up against Weibo 2-5. High chances that BLG could have found a greater set of series wins, and maybe the same to be said for Weibo here. Scoreline doesn't quite paint the picture of their season. I do think they've been performing quite well as a unit overall, but to start this game out, eyes on your junglers. Jun going to be massive on this Neferi.
Let's get this epic showdown underway as Bilibili Gaming and Weibo Gaming take to Summoner's Rift here for Game 1. Now, Rude, I do not have access to audio, but please tell me how loud were the gyos?
I forgot about that. Yeah, no, you know what? They started pretty much the second we loaded into the game. And overall, both teams, they did pretty well, okay? Good support on both sides, which is what we like to hear, what we like to see, especially moving into Game 1. Now, you already highlighted here, Mark, that we're going to see bot push coming out for Weibo. And for this Ashe Seraphine. I, for one, right, we highlighted the junglers to begin with. I'm looking already at that minimap. Both of our junglers have started on opposite sides. It's Jiejie starting on the red buff. Same to be said for Jun as he makes his way to the Krugs. Now, it's going to be the Jarvan, who you're expecting slightly more things from in the early stages of this game. And with what you'd already highlighted in the pre-show, Mark, that is Jiejie's time to go and shine on the Jarvan.
Update chat. Ilya is the GOAT. I've been blessed with the game audio. Everyone say thank you to Ilya for me because he has given me the gift of sound. I was going to leeway that into something, but I forgot my train of thought. You know what?
Hey man,
I was caught up in the moment.
You know, well, when I heard for the first time, I must imagine that I had the same thing, you know?
True.
Where I'm just lost, completely taken aback by this. But we do have a game of League of Legends to talk about. Blessed that Mark can now hear, and we will hope that continues. Long may it do so. As right, we talked about the junglers. We need to see Jiejie maybe do some things. We're looking at how well Knight can keep pace. The reason I won, or 4-1, I'm a Annie hater, is because you always seem to be further behind your enemy mid laner than anyone else. As now Jiejie on the spot side, they forced the early recall.
Look at this, Jiejie. It's a 5 camp into a bot lane dive, and Viper try as he may to at least get one back, but it's still first blood up for Jiejie. But On is able to answer one back with a quick old snap of the wrist and a flick of a Q and a flash to make it a 2-for-1 in favor of BLG.
You know, even though the kill score says BLG came out on top of that, I still favor that if I'm Weibo. You'd lost all the summoners anyway. Elk is going to come out and be able to make some impact down on that bot side. I think the issue for me is that with that wave crashing away from BLG, they're not going to be able to sustain this advantage. We'll take a look at what happened. Viper with a good arcane shift dodges everything that Jiejie is going for. Hong ends up falling on the play afterwards. Slightly, I guess, missed opportunity for him to get away, and Jiejie not tanking.
Brother On. He pops the magical journey. Shun is here to maybe provide some moral support, but I think that's all he can do. It's like, brother, I've got raptors to feed, or farm, I should say, as Shun has already farmed out that camp. One thing I wanted to point out before that debacle happened in sequence, Shun did a 3-camp clear into recall, into getting a longsword, just to make sure that if Jiejie was trying to meet him at any of these crabs, he would have a little bit of a stat advantage on this redeploy, which more and more I'm starting to see as a pattern in certain jungle paths. It's mostly like a Lee Sin thing, but I love that Shun adapted it just to make sure that he was avoiding any case where Jiejie might have an advantage.
Yeah, and in the the current landscape, you can get out onto the map with that extra longsword, that recall, and still be on time for the crab. So we'll see if anything's going to happen down on the spot side. You can see Viper, aggressive arcane shift there, really trying to bait Weibo into going aggressive, as Hong takes a good chunk of their HP. Jun sticks around, cancels one recall, not going to cancel a second. He had a lot of time down there, but his camps on the top side have now spawned. Would like to have been there on the respawn for them, but he goes back to base, picks up that pickaxe, and the Neferi, not expected to be this massive early game source of power, but that level 6 turn on for Neferi, definitely something that is very impressive. And you see Xiaohu here going for a quick trade into the mid lane, using the final ulti there to make sure that you can get enough damage down onto Knight so that he can't really force anything.
Yeah, Jiejie just shows his presence on the bottom side of the map, and with the priority that Xiaohu has made, forcing Knight's health bar to be chunked, I think this would be a good angle for Jiejie to try and look for an early dragon take. Just try and get some dragon stacking on your side so that you're forcing BLG to challenge you later on when it might be more inconvenient for them. So far, they haven't yet pulled the trigger. They needed to wait for bot lane to push out a little bit, but now I see that Jiejie finally has the right conditions to get the first dragon started up. But maybe On can be a little bit of a rat and see if he's can either get some info. Probably not. Just gonna let it go.
You do bring up a good point here, right? Like, it's Weibo that are taking this early dragon. We'd need to look at who that favors, right? That early soul point, who's the one that are going to be looking for it. And for my money, I really don't mind Weibo scaling as this game gets later. I think their opportunity to consistently hold strong is going to be pretty darn apparent, unless Jun can combine with Knight to find that burst. The power of this Ezreal in the late game not going to be so great. We've got that Seraphine there to try and keep you topped off, and I look across the roster of Weibo Gaming. The only thing that's concerning me is how easy it is to engage. The Jiejie is going to try and go in, try and dive, but he's going to be quite solo in that venture. Maybe Zika tries to join, but not necessarily the best dive style top laner that we've seen out of this series. But we need to keep our eyes out for BLG in this early game and see if they can get some sort of advantages back, because I think as this game gets later, it might become that little bit more difficult to try and navigate these big 5v5 team fights.
Right. I wouldn't mind if BLG take their time farming up their resources and then trying to get that snowball on the first item spike.
Yeah.
But if you don't do anything until then yes, then you are kind of building up the tinder for this mega bomb that needs to explode in your favor, because if it doesn't happen, once Shun, I think, is building towards an Eclipse first item, since sometimes with Neferis it's a hubris rush, but Pickaxe and Caulfield's
Eclipse,
that is leaning towards Eclipse, so it's going to be a nice spike of AD and decent ability haste and extra max percentage health damage if he is able to ensure one kill through a Knight to set him up with the guaranteed point-and-click stun off the Q, or if he even wants to help out Bin and try and dive top lane so that Bin is also in a good spot. I think those are fine avenues for BLG to try and get those conditions online for them.
And even to the point as well that how easily that shield is going to be able to help you out as well. As we do see, nice route comes through. Q goes wide by Xiaohu, so not able to dodge out on a large bulk of the damage that the Mel can put down in one trade. But obviously that's Tibbers expended in exchange for not Xiaohu's Eclipse there. He's been going to go in, try to punish Zika on the entrance back to the lane, but instead ends up just finding a proxy, as Jiejie now finds himself with a Bard in this bot side.
Cosmic Binding flashes the Ash Arrow. Jiejie waiting to use the Cataclysm, finally commits it, knowing that On cannot get out of this one alive, and will take the donation of a second kill for this Jarvan, continuously putting pressure on this bot lane and forcing Viper to fall behind.
Yeah, and he's losing out on experience here, more importantly than anything else, and we talked about the fact that that early gank wasn't necessarily the worst thing for Weibo Gaming, because they were going to have a wave coming back to them. Look at that gold disparity, right? Viper came out of that bot dive with a 200 gold lead that has since been offset back to a 300 gold advantage for Elk. He's only getting assists on these plays. He's not been getting any kills just yet. So the Ash more than happy in this bot lane right now. Has got those tier 2 boots. He's working towards the cull as well. So has really opted into this sit back, relax, chill out style of game whilst still finding an advantage.
Yeah. And for Weibo's series against AL last night, the way that they manifested that second game win, this is looking eerily similar to how Jiejie pathed in that game, where he is putting a lot of focus on just trying to get Elk and Hong ahead, get them out of lane early so that they can rotate Xiaohu to the side lane and allow Hong to move with Jiejie. And when you have this Ashe Seraphine duo, you can always fish for long-range ultimates, even if Seraphine's not there. And if an arrow connects, Xiaohu should have enough burst to finish off someone. Zika should have enough burst to finish off someone. Hell, Jiejie might even have enough burst to finish off someone on these first item spikes. So BLG have to be really careful about how much they are letting Viper and On soak all this attention from Weibo Gaming.
And especially in this early stage of the game as well, right? Like, this is a very one-item oriented jungler for Weibo. Enchanted Crystalaro just came back up off of cooldown, so keep your eyes out for any Elk recalls to see if he then looks to fire an arrow from Fog. I mean, the one crucial thing I think so far is that Knight has been able to withstand this mid lane. The reason that Annie can be quite weak is the fact that she gets outranged by the majority of mid laners that really look to go for any trades, Mel being one of them as well. Down a little bit of gold, obviously, but hasn't really dropped too far behind the 8-ball here, and now Zika using the Between Worlds just to cash in on a wave, and been having a bit of a better time up on this top side than maybe he'd expect in this counter matchup.
Yeah, even though he is technically behind in CS, he is definitely more than surviving the lane matchup. Knight looking for some poke onto Xiaohu and trying to force some lane prio. Not sure if Shun feels confident about diving a Mel under the tower, but the second dragon has just spawned, and BLG would like to try and see if they can prevent Weibo Gaming from being able to just secure it for free. Shun is going to be the first one into this banana brush, and Weibo is pivoting back through the bottom side of the river. Xiaohu is teleporting in. Tempered Fate connects on to 2 just as Jiejie was trying to escape. The encore is a big whiff. It's a field goal, but On is the first one to fall. Bin has teleported first into the play and tries to put the pressure down on the Elk, trying to force him back. BLG now need to commit whether they want to continue on the play and the engage or return to the dragon. And that golden eclipse from Xiaohu forces Bin to flash just to make sure that he doesn't get clipped. Jiejie no longer has an cataclysm, but so much time was wasted, and Zika gets the cash in on the top side.
This is a massive win for Weibo. They managed to find turret platings on the top side for Zika. He generates an advantage. There's a kill going over to Xiaohu. There's also the dragon being picked up here, all in a numbers disadvantaged setup. The fact that Weibo come away with this, genuinely a big blunder by BLG. They commit a teleport down to the bot side. They look to try and find the fight 5 versus 4, and it just doesn't work for them. But take a look at how it works out. The True Shot Barrage gets immuned by the Tempered Fate, and On just steps too far forward. He goes into a Cataclysm, and then as that Enchanted Crystal Arrow comes through, you can see Viper doesn't feel the need to cleanse it because he's not under any threat. But that also means that he never does any damage. Yeah, we call this a 5 versus 4 because there were 5 people there. Viper didn't really do anything until the fight was already over. Bin didn't get a chance to do anything until the fight was already over. And On flew too far forward and gave his life for the cause.
And remember how we were talking about BLG's lack of real engage? It's because Shun and Knight, if they're making a 2v1 play, oh yeah, it's super easy to execute, but you are really relying on either Bin to find a flank in Mega Gnar form, or On to land a good Tempered Fate that Knight can get in range for and then follow up, and neither of those conditions were fulfilled, so it was just so difficult for BLG to do anything there. Now Weibo find themselves more than 2,000 gold ahead, with 2 dragons in their pocket. Next objective is going to be Rift Herald in about 1 minute and 35, and while Shun and Knight are still in a decent state to play off these one-item spikes, I'm questioning whether they'll feel confident enough to.
It's a big question. Certainly one that we're hoping that BLG have an answer for, but the way that this game is going, it's trending very heavily towards Weibo being able to find a pretty solid win here. Do see some good trades from Viper. Very, very difficult task that he's just accomplished there, and they're looking for Elk on the bot side. Forces the flash out with that Tempered Fate. but using the arcane shift to go over a volley. I don't know that I've ever seen that before, but Viper just nailed it really first time.
Now Viper still has a flash.
Oh,
Instant
On!
cleanse from On. I think he had a Mikhail's Crucible already in pocket. So deflects the engage attempt that Jiejie was looking for.
Yeah, and the Mikhail's has to be perfect. Doesn't help if you get caught again.
Oh, On with the magical journey got interrupted by the EQ, and Xiaohu finishes him off with the golden eclipse. Weibo Gaming starting to steamroll here in the first 15 minutes of the game.
I mean, like, from the raw mechanical talent, the timing of being able to Mikhail's your own Ash Arrow into then walking away and throwing your life away for the second time in, you know, as many fights, and, you know, can question the other fights as well. The one underneath the bot lane turret, probably not his fault necessarily, but this is two now pretty egregious blunders from On, and it's costing BLG their chances on the map, really.
Well, this Rift Herald has spawned. We'll see how Weibo Gaming try and stop BLG from coming back into the game off of this objective. Zika has his first item already with the Proto Belt, thanks to the time that he got this farm on that top side, collecting plates for free. Bin is in Mega Gnar form, so Weibo Gaming might have to give this one out of fear of that Mega Gnar power. Shun does secure the Rift Herald, so this could be a little bit of gold injection for them, depending on where they send the Rift Herald.
It's going to be a nice pickup for them. Slows the roll of Weibo, who, in fairness, are in a really good spot in this game. 2 dragons to 0, 90 seconds before their soul point spawns, and Xiaohu here 3-0 on the Mel. He's the one who you need to keep your eyes on in these team fights. Can do a lot of work if he's left unchecked, if those spells do land. So it's all on Xiaohu, who I think for me has had a really decent season so far, and I mean, this was coming off of you know, probably a couple of years where we were sort of questioning if Xiaohu was good as the old king that we used to have in the mid lane, and that the opinions slowly dwindling of this player. For me, this split has certainly started to return, to rise back up to a level of Xiaohu's gone past.
He's definitely had far less stinkers than he did have in Split 1. And I'm not sure if that's just a little bit of the good old Spring Tiger narrative waking up at the right time, coming through, or other things are going wrong for Weibo, since it is a 2-5 series record overall that is kind of out of their control. But Xiaohu did have a really nice Mel game last night against Anyone's Legend, and so far he's having a nice one here as BLG try to brute force their way through this tri-bush. But it just forces Weibo back into the control of their river, where 13 seconds away before this Hex Tech Dragon does spawn.
Yeah, so small thing happened off screen. Elk threw the enchanted crystal arrow at Viper, forced his cleanse. That has that's not back up off cooldown, nor is the arrow for Elk, but no cleanse on your Ezreal. Definitely something to be fearful for, as On once again takes a large chunk of his health. Before the fight's really even started, contesting Vision 1v3. Not particularly the way to go about this. Both of these top laners with their teleports ready can join this fight, and I think for BLG it's really important that they do.
Really nice chunk though from Zika. Forces Bin to about 50% HP. If he wants to be ready for this fight, he has to take a base now, and Weibo have already channeled the TP from Zika. Viper and Shun are in the pit! Did he steal it? I have no idea. Jiejie still secured it. And now Weibo Gaming find themselves on Soul Point. As long as they can get out alive, Knight is going to try to force the opposition here. Flash W over the wall, looking for the first kill. Shun picks it up with the Howl's Pursuit. He gets the reset on the Jiejie, and it's a big shutdown going in the pockets of Knight. BLG may have lost the dragon, but they forced their way back into the game.
Yeah, 2 kills for that dragon. We're calling a little bit worth on both sides there. BLG will be happy that they got some of those shutdowns. Weibo will be happy that in 5 minutes time they have an opportunity to secure a Hex Tech Soul. Both of these top laners teleported in. Neither one of them had any real impact. It's Weibo who managed to find it. Jiejie comes out on top of the first real smite fight that we've seen so far this game. But it's Knight who ends up being the difference maker, as he has been so frequently for this BLG roster. Annie from over the wall, completely unchecked. Flash forward, goes for the disintegrate first, and then Tibbers afterwards. Elk, without that summoner spell, not able to get out of danger, and the Jun on the reset, able to find another one.
We got to finally see the Annie and Nefiri combo work hand in hand to start manifesting a little bit of an advantage for BLG, who now have seen their first gold advantage over Weibo this entire game, now that Ben was able to at least secure first brick on the bottom side of the map.
It's a good start from Weibo, which has now suddenly dissipated off the back of that. After the kills, small gold lead for Weibo still existed, but after BLG were able to make things work on the map, they've established a 1k gold lead for themselves. So we'll see if they can continue with this trend. It's not particularly spread well across the rest of the side. It's sort of 500 gold for Bin and on here, surprisingly enough, 400 gold in the advantage over Hong. So it's an even game, to be honest with you, Erha. And this dragon that spawns in about 3 minutes' time really going to be the decider. I do think that a Hextech Soul puts Weibo in a very solid position. Reminder that we said, okay, this Weibo composition probably has better scaling as it moves into the late game by nature of this Seraphine existing. So if they get a Soul as well, that's not something that BLG are going to be easily able to counter.
Jiejie has had a really intelligent game in the first 15 minutes, setting up Elk and Hong for success and being able to at least give them a lot of resources so that they can operate and get to their scaling points a lot faster. The first 3 dragons, also credit to him for being able to set up. I would not... Hang on. Xiaohu face checking into the bush. Rebuttal will at least block some of the damage, but he is forced to flash just to make sure that he doesn't take too much upon the entrance. It does buy enough time for BLG to take the first tier turret on the top side of the map.
I mean, I'm just looking at this mid lane matchup once again here. If you watch any other Annie be played, it feels like they'll be, at this stage in the game, they're down in gold. They're down in experience. They've sacrificed something to make sure that they are relevant in other ways, but Knight has proven that in these team fights he can still be relevant whilst still keeping that experience disparity and the gold advantage actually in this 1 versus 1. So very impressive stuff. I mean, we talked about it in the pre-show. The BLG solo lanes are their ways to success. They use Njun to sort of facilitate that if he can move in between those side lanes. But this time round, Jiejie's kind of had the run of things through the jungle, and it's coming down to just one team fight for the time being that gets a little bit of an advantage for BLG. We'll see if they can replicate that, though. In 1 minute's time, it's not going to be as easy. Elk has his flash this time round, and that means that if a Tibbers or a rogue Annie flashes over the wall at him, the likelihood is that response will be there.
And if Weibo really do trust in their scaling over BLG, I would not mind if Weibo allowed BLG to move all their wards and vision into this bottom side river for the dragon, and then try and get advantages on the cross map. Continue getting gold into yourself. Try and give some time for Zika to push on that top side. Get some vision and prepared for Baron. Because Weibo, this is the one time where BLG are finally ahead in gold, and if you decide to still say, yeah, we're still better than them, and you are wrong, then you are in danger of removing everything that you worked for in the first 15 minutes, gone in an instant.
Weibo already with 4 members down on this bot side, looking to clear out that vision, looking across at the items. 2 item checkpoints have been hit for all of the carries really in this game, so it's a pretty much even footing fight. Whereas Jun found an angle on the back here, tries to get in, quite able to do that as both On and Viper portal over to set up this wall that Weibo have to try to force through.
Bin is about to go mega just at the right time with the dragon being burned down by BLG. Now you have to commit and make sure that Weibo cannot get in using Bin as the bodyguard. Jiejie looks immediately for the first target on On. They blow him up. 2,000 HP. Can Jiejie secure it? It's Annie, the Knight of Shining Armor for BLG to stop the Hextech Soul from being secured. And BLG feel confident taking this fight further into the beyond. Shun dashes into the tower and continues playing with his food while the rest of BLG start to corral them like sharks.
Oh, Zika!
Shun goes into the air, dodges out of the turret aggro, and Shun is popping off. Oh, that's the Shun Nefiri special and an ace at 24 minutes.
And that's what we've been waiting for here, Erha. We said the entire time of this game, Jun has been the one who needs to move forward. Now for Weibo, this starts so well. They find the quick pick but it's onto the support. It's onto the Bard, who's already sort of used or not even got to use Tempered Fate, so it's not a bad pick. And the fact that Knight gets caught by that Encore, you think, actually, this could be good for Weibo. But Jun, this whole time on the Neferi, just gets ignored almost. Darkin Dagger after Darkin Dagger, making absolute mincemeat of the Weibo roster.
Knight might be in trouble here. We've got reinforcements from Weibo, but Knight sidesteps the Q, drops the bear. Shun, meanwhile, eliminates Hong from the rift.
TP behind as
and
well.
He's ready to hunt for more. It's a bin teleport coming in. Oh, the Ash Arrow's a little too early from Elk. And Shun and the rest of Bilibili Gaming are online with a 5,000 gold advantage.
And it just feels like they've absolutely lost their heads as Weibo Gaming there, just throwing themselves absolutely into the mixer. 4,000 career kills in the LPL for Knight, the third most of all time. Hats off for the Annie performance finding that one.
3-0-6. Just to put that in perspective, on a champion that is super susceptible to something like a Jarvan, something like an Ashe and a Seraphine, because if you don't have Flash and you don't have Proto Belt, you are a sitting duck. You are waiting to get absolutely blasted. But Annie was not focused at all this game. The goals for Weibo were trying to unlock bot lane, get them out and about. And BLG are able to bide their time enough this game to now run the tables here in game 1.
I mean, Hong there just throwing his life away, going through that Hex Gate. Elk as well. There's a little circle there to tell you when they're going to land. Well, numerous amounts of mistakes here, and it kind of goes back to our point from the pre-show as well, Rafa, that these two marksmen, and Elk in particular, were our 1 and 2 in the last split, but so far in this one, haven't yet been able to find that same success. Elk having a slightly rough one here as well. The Ashe in the early stages of the game, don't get me wrong, worked fine, but really hasn't been able to do any of that late game damage that I come to expect from this pick.
Yeah. Definitely not a safe world to be in when all of your engaged tools can't really be used as protection tools against Neferi, because if you fire it at the wrong time or you don't bait out the call of the pack from Shun, he can just dodge all of the long-range skill shots that are trying to stop this Neferi in her tracks. And now he's got a Serpent's Fang, so if you are hoping for some shields from your barrier or for your Seraphine, well, you can kiss that one goodbye as BLG continue the siege into Weibo Gaming's base.
Already taking down the lion's share of those inner turrets. As Viper playing on the 1v2.
Holy moly, Viper in a 1v4 and takes out Xiaohu!
Oh my god.
No way he gets out alive. He finally falls to Zika's weirding, but a Tempered Fate is about to set up maybe another engage from Knight, but he goes onto the left, and then he sinks it onto the right. BLG just catching Weibo Gaming continuously by surprise. They flash the first stand icons that they so deservedly won, proving why they were the best team in the world over in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And BLG will close out game 1 in dominant style.
That is a tremendous fight from BLG and a massive one from Knight. Once again, he gets to have his glory on the game where he ticks over to 4,000 LPL kills. What a incredible performance. Medjai's locked in just to add insult to injury to close out the game and hits them with the fake as well. Tempered Fate's down. The Annie's there, prepped and primed. You have to imagine as soon as that Tempered Fate wears off, you're going for that. No, immediately turns, spots Elk, hey buddy, you ain't safe, and takes down the Ashe without any remorse whatsoever.
You know, Rude, there are times when I'm watching Pro League of Legends and one of the best players in the world or the best player in their role in a certain domestic league will be given a champion like Annie. And you think, oh yeah, this champion is super straightforward, super basic. There's no real skill expression. And then they get their hands on it and they demonstrate their creativity, how they're able to think outside the box of, oh, this is what the opponent expects me to do. Well, guess what? Here's a quick change up.
Yeah, and right, like Annie, like you say, doesn't have the deepest mechanical skill set, but what she does have is the ability for you to showcase why you are smarter than everybody else on the Rift. And that's really what Knight showed off in that final play right there. Really solid performance, really throughout. Keeping pace in the early stages of the game, then moving into having an advantage as we got later on. Never sacrificed too much to make the Annie feel useful, and had an absolutely stellar performance, top to bottom. Managed to find a game win for BLG.
You know, up until that moment, Rude, I used to think BLG stood for Bilibili Gaming. I now realize that it stands for Brain Loaded Gaming for Knight. And just beautiful stuff. Now, when we get into player of the game, there's two clear frontrunners, obviously, in both Knight and Xun, because they didn't die a single time in this game. They had the most kills. They racked up a lot of damage. Maybe once we get into the grass, we'll see who actually did more damage in the end. But where are you leaning, Rude?
I'm still gonna go with Knight for this one. I'm a massive Annie hater, and when anybody can make that champion look good, it means that they've played really, really well. And I think that the heads-up play, the ideas that Knight had in this game, like I'm more impressed by Knight's performance than I am from Xun's in this game. Felt like Xun did, you know, the right things, turned up to the team fights, didn't die, played his team fights well, but I wasn't looking at Xun going, oh my god, you're playing like an absolute madman, like I did with Knight. Even though Xun probably was, and I'm probably doing him a disservice, my eyes got drawn to the Annie more than anything else.
Like we said, it's hard to look impressive on a champion that seems so straightforward and no real mechanical depth to it, but you do something like that. And we talked about how BLG had a very, very narrow window to get their snowball online. Wow, Viper did actually a crap ton of damage considering he was focused so heavily this game, but still found multiple pockets to just expend all of his skill shots there. But that fourth dragon fight, Weibo were up, not super up, but they were up. And then I even gave a word of caution to Weibo. I was trying to speak across the oceans, the vast cosmos of time, Rude, and trying to tell them, you don't have to fight for this dragon. If you feel like BLG BLG could beat you at this fight when they're up in gold. So if you scale, you can take a backseat. You can try and play for more farm. But Weibo said, we're better. And they were wrong.
Yeah, and ultimately it did end up costing them this game. I mean, for BLG as well, I feel like in the early stages of the game, I threw a lot of criticism at the way of On, but this is just kind of proof to show you that even if your support has a couple of moments where they're low-key chucking it, that as long as the other four players can hold the fort down, it never really puts you in too bad a position. And what actually ends up happening is that they see this sort of global taunt on the Bard after that early stage, after those early stages of the game. You know, they end up going, oh, well, we've killed the Bard so many times before, why don't we try it again? And actually, that's just not the target that they need to be focusing out. You know, Enchanted Crystallara going onto him in this fight, end up trying to focus him a couple other times as well. But the ideas from Weibo certainly left missing a little bit as they move throughout the rest of the game.
There is a couple other things I wanted to look at this game and didn't really get to track it as part of the overall game progression, since a lot of us were kind of focused on what was happening bot lane and what the two junglers were doing. But top lane, Bin had that early TP that they were trying to force a fight 5v4, and it got nothing. And I thought, wow, okay, Weibo have a really good opportunity where Zika is now ahead of the curve. He has his first item. He should start trying to now, like, force some blitz plays with Jiejie or with this Ashe Seraphine engage combo, and then just start snowballing the game. And this has been one of my grievances with Weibo and Zika in particular, because there have been multiple games now where Jiejie's playing not towards Zika, but they gave him counterpick, and he has an advantage, and he doesn't really do anything impactful with it. It's like 75% games where he gets counterpick and he has an advantage, and then by the time he starts acting, the window has closed.
And that's a problem. And for a player like Zika as well, who I think when we heard was joining this Weibo roster, we rejoiced for Zika, and sort of thought, oh my god, finally, this is good news. And he just wasn't able to pull it off, and he hasn't been for the majority of this split. It is Knight who secures that player of the game, I think validly so, on this Annie 607, and making sure that a 3k gold lead come the end of the game, I think that's a really big boost for him.
Knight continue to proving that he is one of the most valuable players, not just to his team, but to his league here in the LPL. And further, every day that we see this guy play continues to show that he might just be the greatest of all time we've ever seen here in the LPL. As we get closer and closer to that conversation where we start debating if he beats the ranks of someone like Mako, who has kind of held that title for a long time now. But that is the conclusion of our first game of this series. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, y'all, it's going to be game numero dos between BLG and Weibo Gaming.